What's going on, guys? Welcome to the show. Welcome to Sunday night. This is not the Oscars. This is the Walking Dead after show for AfterBuzz TV, Season 7, second half of the season, Episode 3, so Episode 11. Yeah. Let's get into the episode, guys. We're going to break the whole thing down for you. We'll see you in just a second.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the show.
You just mathed like crazy right there.
Just mathed like crazy. And the Oscar goes to The Walking Dead. We're live.
That makes sense.
It really doesn't work like that.
So we're here to break it down for you guys. While you guys were busy watching Jimmy Kimmel stumble through names that didn't belong to white nominees, we are talking about The Walking Dead. And here we are to talk about Episode 11 of Season 7, titled Hostiles and Calamities.
There you go.
John Carle had it written down. I didn't, if you're not on audio.
And I never write anything down.
Pause was for. I really liked this episode. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I thought it was a really solid, solid episode. I like that it filled in a lot of the gaps that we were looking for. It gave a lot of clarity, and it felt like a really strong episode for Eugene, which is a really weird statement to say, but I really liked it. So
very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked having Negan back. I liked that it was like light and funny, but also really like some parts were really dry. I mean, not dry, but very heavy and deep. Like, yeah.
And there are only 2 S-bombs, so we just have to be careful the amount of times that we say that in this episode.
Yeah, right. But didn't he say ass a couple times?
Oh, he said asshole a ton.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what it was. Yeah. So we, it's like what, 3 assholes equals 1 shit equals the 1. Yeah.
Do you have a math?
2 and 1.
Do you have an algorithm that we can look at for that later?
I was trying to figure it out live when we entered the show. You heard me going through the motions. So, guys, we are going to break down this episode for you. Those were our initial reactions to it. If you want to follow along with the conversation, you can follow along with any one of us on Twitter. You can find me at Ben Bateman Media. On the far side, we've got Susannah Kim.
Yes, you guys can find me at Susannah_Kim, SUSANNAH_KIM, and I'm in the live chat right now.
She is. Yes. And I am John Carle, also the John Carle on all social media. And then, of course, Whiskey and Waffles on YouTube. Buy my shirt.
It's good advertising.
It's really good advertising.
Sweet. So here we are. I really enjoyed this one. I thought that it was quite good. And if you guys, by the way, would like to help us out with a rating or review on iTunes, but what you think about our review tonight, that would be super awesome. That's kind of what is required for us to keep pumping out content for free. So just help us out with that. And we'll just keep doing this forever and ever.
Forever and ever. I mean, the show might end. That's the problem.
But we'll still go on forever and ever.
Okay, fair.
Yeah.
So I want to jump in with what I felt was the strongest part of tonight's episode, and that is the relationship between Dwight and Sherry. I really liked what they did tonight. I liked this. So we pick up back right at the moment that Daryl leaves, and actually like Negan and his crew finding out what's happened, and Dwight basically realizing that he's in a lot of trouble, and trying to come up with a plan to cover his tracks. So, or take the blame and get his way out of trouble, because we weren't sure at this point who actually had let Daryl go.
Yeah, I mean we had it between Sherry and Dwight, but there was no confirmation until this episode, and it picked up in a great way because you see him. Seeing the body, you see him walking through, seeing the chest set flipped over and everything like that, and then seeing the note, and it was like, okay, this is what it was.
Right.
Right, yeah. As soon as he was looking at the note, it's like, okay, so it wasn't you. Who was it,
Yeah.
And when he was looking at it, he was spending a lot of time looking at the note, so I was like, he has to recognize that handwriting. So I figured that would play in later.
Yeah, you had, as soon as he looked, right? As soon as he looked. So
those G's, man.
Yeah.
The way she wrote her G's.
Yeah, very, very...
girly.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Ben would have gotten us in trouble if he had said it.
Very pretty and elegant. So, yeah, he figures out that he's effed, and that Sherry has been the one who let Dwight let Daryl go. Yeah, I'm having a moment.
Nope.
Wait.
Nope.
Huh? Yeah,
no.
I was like, I can't. Yeah.
Sherry let Daryl go, and Dwight knew he was in trouble. Yes.
I'm having a stroke.
Yeah.
So,
I think you have to loosen up the bow tie.
Yeah,
I think
maybe.
it's like cutting off oxygen to you today.
So yeah, Negan gets back, and we have this whole confrontation. So first and foremost, Dwight just gets his ass kicked.
Yep.
Which is like, I guess Negan's style. We're just gonna like scare you and beat you up, and then throw you in the hole, and then see what happens.
I think that's fair. I mean, he still has to rule with fear. That's the thing. He still has to rule with fear. So that one made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he put him in there for what, 1 night or something like that?
Exactly.
And then he's like, yeah, let's talk. Let's figure this out. And Dwight knows and at this point, like for the rest of the episode, he's still protecting Sherry. He knows if anybody else is going to go after her, she's definitely going to get killed.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, he took responsibility. I mean, it's weird because with his relationship to Sherry, she took the responsibility at one point to keep him alive.
Yes.
Which gets his face burned. She takes responsibility, obviously, to become one of Negan's wives, which is a strong and a weak move in some ways. But it's a sacrificial move, and it keeps Dwight alive. So in this situation, he sees that. And despite the fact that they've obviously had their differences, and he deeply still loves Sherry, clearly.
Yes.
But he has a lot of anger, clearly, that goes along with it.
Right, but I mean, you go to, fast forward to when you're at the cabin and everything like that, and it's like, she kept the rings. Like, she didn't give those back to him and stuff like that. So in his mind, until that happened, he still had a chance of repairing what was happening despite the extreme circumstances with Negan and everything like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that letter was like the most poignant part of the episode.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I just thought that the whole dynamic between those two it was the most interesting part of the entire episode for me.
Yeah.
I thought she was going to cry during that.
Really?
I almost did.
Yeah.
I almost did.
Because we got through the letter, and then
When
it's
he
like,
pulls out the pretzels and the beer, I lost it. I was like, ah. I loved it. And I like right when he got to the house, he was like, honey. So it's like he still has that hope, he's still
She's
holding
gonna
on
be
to
there.
her. He hadn't given up on her. But then, you go through that letter, and at the end, she ends it with a goodbye,
Yep.
And it's like she gave up on him, and that was so heartbreaking for me.
You guys think there's any chance they still repair things?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
I mean, maybe that's just hopeless romantic.
Hopeful,
but
yeah.
I mean,
I'm hopeful too. I'm hopeful too.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
I really root for them.
She's got to come back. We know she's not gone.
or
so.
she gets killed.
Right.
Come on.
I'm terrible, you know this.
Have we discussed? Is there a ship name for Dwight and Sherry? It's kind of weird because they were married. So
Yeah, it's not a shipping if they're actually a married couple.
Well, yeah,
I
but
feel
they're
like.
not
It's an
anymore.
ex-ship.
So yeah, it's an ex ship, but you can still ship them. Like, what would it be, Dwery?
I like Dwery.
Shite.
Let's go with Dwery. Let's definitely go with Dwery.
Let's go shite.
Drink before the episode without me?
I'm going shite. So he finds the cabin, the rings. He has them all in the cigarette box. He has that one burnt cigarette left with her lipstick on it.
Which is
loved it.
creepy.
Oh no, I loved it. What
was-
is wrong with you?
Yeah, what's
Get out.
wrong
Go
with
back
you?
to
Get
your
some
side.
romance, John Carle.
I'm sorry,
my
you're saving cigarettes.
That's all he has, man.
It's her lipstick on it. Her lips were on that. Okay, you're not having it.
So here's one thing I was wondering.
It's weird.
Back at the Savior's camp, so Dwight orchestrates this whole framing of Dr. Carson.
Yep.
And I was trying to figure out because Dr. Carson's talking to him and he seems to kind of be on Negan's side. And he said some sort of inflammatory things, but he didn't feel particularly evil to me.
I think my reaction, because just for context for the people listening, you watched the episode separate from the two of us.
Yep.
And during the initial conversation with Dwight and the doctor, I think I literally said, damn, that is one evil doctor. Something along those lines.
You felt he was really, because I felt like he was kind of an opportunist in some ways. Like he had become cold and he sort of had things to say that were veiled in support of Negan, but not particularly evil. More just this is the reality of things.
I don't know. He started, the way he was talking, I kind of got the vibe that he's like, oh, I'm kind of enjoying being the bad doctor. The whole do no harm thing doesn't really apply to me.
And he kind of had an air of sort of what Eugene was saying. He knows that Negan needs him,
Right.
So it kind of felt he can say whatever he wants and get away with it. I don't
Yeah.
think he had any sort of threat,
Yeah, he had the extreme arrogance by not knowing that Eugene was going to fall into that category.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting though. That's a pretty cold move on Dwight's part. He frames him with the piece from the letter.
Well, the dude was also still talking trash and being like, "Yeah, it's probably a good thing you killed her."
Yeah.
He's still in
but
love with her.
what I'm trying to say is the doctor had definitely the vibe where I would have been pissed if I was Dwight, where I've been you're not a good dude, but not I want to get the top half of you thrown into an incinerator.
Well, I got the whole
Right.
half of him thrown in.
Yeah. No, his legs were hanging out at the end there.
But the thing with it was though, he needed to cover tracks somehow. And if the person that you're framing is dead, it's much easier to cover your tracks versus if they just burned his face and he got to be around longer.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, things could start coming to light. Now the only way it comes to light is if Sherry reappears.
Right.
So he covered one of the two tracks.
Which you have to think she's going to, though.
Yeah.
I mean, she has to.
She has to.
Yeah,
I would
excited.
feel. Yeah, we're.
I'm so excited.
Susannah and I are both
because
on board.
not only is she, Dwight's ex-wife, she's Negan's wife. You know what I mean? She has this in. I don't know. She has to come back.
What's the chat saying? Anything around what we're talking about yet?
I don't care for the doctor.
Yeah.
And then we have
we all
don't
agree
have
on that.
Bodil Soldeberg says, wait, is Eugene the new doctor now? Because that was something I was wondering.
That was the impression that
Yeah.
they gave. Yeah.
Definitely.
But is he like, I mean, obviously he has a
he-
PhD and everything. Is he like a medical doctor though?
I don't think he
how it
actually
works.
has a PhD. I think
No, that was
That's
the
what he
original
said.
lie.
He was
That's
like-
but yeah, within the community, he has a
right,
PhD.
right, right. Okay, yeah.
All the things he was spouting off are from the original lie to Abraham.
Yeah, and,
So
and
you-
that's the thing is like they don't need to know that he can't actually do any of this stuff yet. If he could fake it, he can make it essentially.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, someone, Jay Nicky, I guess he forgot that Eugene was a, in quotations, doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we'll see how that plays out.
In this world, like, what do degrees really mean anyway? If you know some stuff, you know enough.
I mean, mostly in the real world too. It doesn't make that much
True
of a
enough,
difference.
True enough. Yeah, so that pretty much is the extent of what's gone on with Dwight this episode. I want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff Sherry said in the letter, though, because this was exposition that had been hinted at, but was like very crystal clear. They were making it very clear to the audience what the message was, why the relationship to Daryl and Dwight was what it was. And I thought, like, the stuff when she says, you know, the reason I let Daryl go is because I could see the way when you looked at him that he represented the man you used to be.
Yep.
And I'm sorry you've become the man that you are now. It's my fault. You know, now you've killed. I mean, she said some pretty deep cut stuff, but about his comparisons to Daryl, those were the things where I was like, this is. It didn't actually feel like beating me over the head with useless exposition, which a thing like this normally feels like. It actually felt well placed.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it really illustrated the importance of that relationship.
Because there were cuts to Dwight too in it, because it's like, I used to love you for all of these reasons, but now I can't. It's not that I don't want to, it's I can't.
Right.
And she takes part of that blame for herself, but it's also, you know, as much as she is to blame for him making the change because of the deal that she cut, she's also saying you did make the change, so you're just as much as fault without ever explicitly saying that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like how they kept showing the photo of them in their previous, you know,
Yeah.
before the collapse or whatever, and they're so happy and just seeing the difference in his face. And obviously now he has a scarring, but just like how sunken in and like, oh, he's just been so beaten down by everything. I love the difference of that.
The redemption of Dwight is still going to happen. I feel it. I just don't know if Sherry's going to be involved. We might find Sherry and then she dies in front of Dwight or something like that. That might happen. I don't know. And shite will be
Guys
no
are
more.
bleak. Also in the chat, they were going for Dwery.
They were going for Dwery?
Yeah,
Wait,
so,
they're not going for shite?
No
That's
shite?
so shocking.
no shite fans.
All right, so yeah, I thought that letter was definitely the most interesting part. And then
I did find it interesting in the letter. They talked about his memory a lot, which is something we haven't gotten referenced before.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really
True.
interesting because obviously it was a great plot device for. You know, I didn't think you would remember me coming here, and you wouldn't remember the pretzels and the beer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it showed, you know, if he had this major memory issue, it showed how important she was to him because he was able to overcome it. But I don't know if that's something that is going to come back in another capacity because it's a very specific ailment, I guess you could say, for somebody to deal with, is having like a bad memory.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah, it
like,
sucks,
was that specific to this episode, or is that a longer term thing for Dwight? That's what I'm curious about.
yeah,
with that.
maybe they'll make note of it for a later episode or something
Yep.
like that. So at the same time, we have Eugene gets back to the Savior's compound with Negan.
Yep.
And he's got like the bag over his head, and he's being all, you know, crybaby and whatnot, and they're taking him down the
Eugene.
hallway, and he thinks,
I really thought he was going to pee himself in the hallway.
nothing would surprise me with that dude.
Yeah.
And then they put him in a sweet room with Atari and like a bunch of like fresh produce and like frying pans.
He had almost a full like carton of eggs in there and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I was like, oh, that's wow, okay, cool.
Yeah, he had a good setup in there.
Yeah. Well, I
digs.
think the big difference with this scenario versus the Daryl one is this one, Negan can actually play the good cop because Eugene's already petrified of him. You don't need to break Eugene. You're already picking up somebody who's essentially broken.
Totally, yeah, and he knows that from the second that he sees him. I thought it was like such a funny and interesting way to write Eugene when she's like, "What do you want? Do you want anything?" He's like, "I can have anything I want." He's like,
Yeah.
"Can I have lobster?" She's like, "No, what kind of a place do you think this is?"
Stupid.
And then, but I also love that he's such a weak person that he's so willing to like ask for nice things from these people that like bashed in his friend's head in front of him. Like
Seriously.
he just like he's But he's such a survivalist in that way. He's like what he's done best since the beginning is just survive at any means necessary.
Fake it, and he did make it twice
true.
now.
That's very true. I mean, all I got from this episode is Eugene's a complete sociopath. Like, he's very aware of things that he's doing, but he chooses to do them anyway.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I feel like he so easily is giving into this whole, like, Negan compound, and you're getting comfortable so quickly, and it's hard for me to even tell if he's thinking of his friends back in Alexandria.
If I went a year and a half without Atari or video games, I can completely understand where he's coming from.
So there's that.
Yeah. I'm also terrible, apparently.
Really interesting, though, to me, that what the video game system they had that was still functional at that point was Atari. Like, I'm telling you, to find a working Atari at this point, like an actual old Atari, is significantly harder than like a Nintendo 64, a PlayStation, something like in the last like 15, 20 years. I mean, an Atari, a working Atari that hasn't broken down is like, that's like the early 80s, right?
I still have a functioning one.
Oh, goodness.
It's like that, yeah, right? Like 35 years?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty impressive.
I still have a working one, so it's not that shocking to me.
Yeah, but you're like a giant dork who plays tons of video games.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they didn't need flat screen TVs. They're like, all right, here's some you know, old piece of crap that you could just throw it into.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, that's really specific.
I like that it was like an old school game, though. It would have been weird if it was like Donkey Kong or like
something a little
World of
newer.
War.
Right. Totally. He's playing World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
You can't. The servers are.
We have a functional connection. We have a LAN connection. It's really strong. Yeah. So he gets set him to his new spot, and Negan's like, Dr. Smarty Pants, you're the man. You know, let me send you my wives tonight.
Well, before that, I love the test of him being the Smarty Pants, because Negan just didn't give in at the first place. He actually goes, okay, help solve this problem, because he's not going to take anybody just for face value.
No.
If you say you're a doctor, he doesn't care if you say you're a doctor.
He knows he made the bullet too. Remember, so that's the single reason he's back there. That he even has like the entry. The bullet was his audition.
He's already so impressed by him.
But it was really interesting, like how high he was already considered before he proved himself.
Yeah.
Because that was just from the bullet that he was number 16.
Yeah.
And then it was after that he starts embracing his level when he's getting the pain pills and stuff, or the cold pills. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting because he's like, oh yeah, and also because we haven't experienced this with walkers in the past of somebody putting a helmet on them until last week. That was literally the first time.
Yeah.
And the chat will tell me if I'm wrong, I'm sure. But that I think is the first time where we've experienced a walker with a helmet. And then this week he's like, oh yeah, and pour some of that molten metal on his head, and you know, you're basically giving him the molten crown from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And Negan's like, oh, that's awesome. So I like you even better because you're kind of twisted.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's the coolest thing I've ever heard. That was definitely a good. They like to throw in the odd, weird, gross Walker moment, and the Walker splitting in half due to rot and just the guts was definitely like that was the one this episode, and that was great. You don't get a lot of Walker anymore.
Okay. Here's the thing. Visually, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
It was the one thing that was just like this is we're watching a TV show, because it happens right then and there.
Right.
That it just because they have a ton of walkers out there, and they could probably go days or weeks without one of them falling apart. It's literally when they walk Eugene out there that's when that one decides to fall apart.
Yeah, but you've got to figure that like some of the other ones in the weeks prior probably had fallen apart, and they'd like replaced them. And maybe that one he had seen it starting to like one half of him was like maybe.
I'm just saying it's too perfect timing.
Yeah, I feel you. It's not as perfect timing as Rosita disarming bombs, so I'll take this over that any day of the week.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's like, you know, do your molten metal thing. It's a good idea. It'll work. And Negan's like, great, you're the man. Let me send you my wives. No sex though. And so the wives try to con Eugene into making them a pill to kill Negan.
Yeah.
And I liked that Eugene went through the whole process. He goes and flexes his muscle in the point system to get all his stuff. He takes all the meds, literally everything.
Yep.
Goes back, makes the pills, and then doesn't give them to the girls
because of the math. That was why. That was the amazing part to me, is like, it was, you know, how many pounds does she weigh? Oh, roughly $120 probably. And then they're asking for the multiples, and he doesn't buy it. So it actually proves that despite the fact that he's lying about being a doctor in XYZ, he was smart enough to actually know that piece of it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just intellect. It's like that was actually a wise move on his part to figure that piece out.
Yeah.
It's instinct.
Yeah, he doesn't want to arm them. He doesn't want to arm them to make a mistake and have it come back to him.
Right.
Which it's just so interesting because then he made them, though. He made the pills. That's the thing I was trying to figure out is it took him making the pills and then thinking about it to realize that?
But no, it took seeing what he did to the doctor to make the decision.
To realize that if I cross this guy, I'm just dead, straight up. I'm just going to get burned alive.
Well, I think he already knew that. I think it's a matter of just like he's already seen one bit of brutality.
Yeah.
And then you saw somebody who was in the trusted inner circle of Negan.
Literally his position.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
So we assume then that Eugene becomes the new doctor.
Yeah.
Dr.
Right.
Eugene.
And that's he's right when he talks to Frankie and Frankie and Tanya, where it's like, yeah, you're not going to do this because he needs me more than you, because there are more attractive women than there are qualified doctors here.
And that's what made me frustrated, because I feel like, so you are already on Negan's side, because he's shutting these girls down. In no way is he like considering like, oh, maybe this is a good idea, or this isn't something that we hadn't really thought of, or this is something we could plan together and I can be the hero of the day. But he's so, I mean, obviously he's gone through all this and he's traumatized by what's happening.
And he has Atari.
Yeah.
He's got his sweet Atari and it's eggs and his jar of pickles. So you think he's just so happy with where he is now that's his new position?
I definitely don't think he's happy. I think he is an opportunist, though, and I think he's not confident enough that it was going to work. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he's enjoying where he's at, but I do think he's going to be as comfortable as he can until the right opportunity pops up.
Yeah, because this is what I think. I think Eugene gets in that situation. He looks around and he realizes, okay, if I play by their rules, I've got a sweet setup. And the sweetest part of it is that I'm not dead. This guy bashes people's brains in. People that I know. He knows that I'm their friends, and he's putting me in this position, which means if I play by his rules, in theory, I'll survive. Now, he's too smart to not realize that at a certain point, he's going to be asked to make weapons to hurt his friends. Yep. He's going to be asked to hurt his friends.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what the bullets are for specifically, is to hurt his friends.
So, but this is only day one. Day 2. So, what I think is that he looks around him and he's like, all right, I'm too much of a sissy to get out of here. I'm not going to make a break for it on my own. I'm not going to fight to get out of here. I'm not going to kill Negan. So until my friends rescue me, I have to stay alive. Yep. And the way I'm going to stay alive is by being part of the inner circle, becoming valuable. He has that moment when the light turns on when he realizes, wait a minute, I tricked Abraham into trusting me by doing exactly this thing, and it worked just fine for a long time to keep me alive. I'm going to do the exact same thing to somebody with way more power.
That's a manipulative sociopath, right?
No, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying I think that's where his thought process comes from, is that he just realizes there's no move he's going to make that's going to get him out of the situation. He doesn't believe in himself. He's not going to bet on himself to do that.
Well, he also knows, like, this isn't like an I can escape scenario, because one, he doesn't know the direction to get back to Alexandria because he was bag covered the entire time, and then he isn't a survivalist in nature. Like, if he encounters a horde, he's not living through that, and he knows that.
Yeah, I think I was trying to think of like this. So at the end when he's talking to Dwight, he goes through the whole Negan. I am Negan. I was even Negan before I met you. It just took meeting you to know for sure that I was Negan.
Yeah. The best part of that was still and he didn't even let him finish the sentence.
Didn't need to.
Yeah, I love that part of it.
Yeah, that was the thing that I found most interesting. That's the part of it that you ask. Is that theatricality from him? Is his going so all in theatricality, or is he just that much of a sociopath? And you seem to think he's that much of a sociopath.
I kind of think so. I mean, that's what we have going on in the chat. We have Lil D Ballin 86. Eugene is playing the long game.
Yep.
So it's hard to say if he actually changed, but you think he's actually playing the long game, right?
I think they spent too much time developing Eugene in last season, especially in that pre-finale episode when he was hanging with Abraham.
Yep.
They spent too much time kind of trying to establish that he did want to be brave. He did care about his friends, and he wanted to fight and all those things. That I don't think they're trying to abandon that character trait.
Yep.
But then, like, when we see him go to get the meds or like the cold medication or whatever from the woman, I felt like he was very he was so mean, and I think felt a little out of character for me.
But I think that's what you have to do if you're playing the long game. So, like, the way you dismantle anything most effectively is doing it from within the inside. And I think if he went in there and he's like this nice and happy-go-lucky person, when all these other people who are in, let's call them the top 20, which are probably Negan's highest generals, are all raging assholes, if all of a sudden he's the one nice guy, nobody's going to buy it.
I mean, it's all part of his facade.
Like, everybody that's at the top is abusing their power. We saw it with Dwight when you had the initial episode where you saw the inside of the compound and he's going over and grabbing stuff. And it was, because you saw him see the kid who grabbed the thing and stole it at the beginning, and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, this is how I'm going to fit into this society, is by, waving it around and showing how much authority he has.
I think he looked around and he was sort of like, all right, the things I've learned in my time with all these people are the stronger characters survive the longest. So the ones who just decide to assert themselves and take charge, have some balls essentially, they seem to be the ones that survive the longest. And the whole, I'm really weak and I'm just your friend and I'm just going to be really nice and please and thank you and be really respectful in this world doesn't usually work for people. Seems like unless you're somebody like, unless you're Morgan. Like
that's literally what the doctor said. Because Sherry was weak. She's the kind of person you don't still expect to be here at this point.
No, the doctor said something so interesting though. What the doctor said was very specific, right? He said somebody who would do something that selfless and like kind-hearted or something. I didn't write it down.
Something along those lines, but
basically
that's
something,
sentiment.
It was a very positive trait. Somebody who would do something that's selfless and generous or something is not someone you expect to be around. Right. And that's that's the representation of the attitude Eugene's taking on. That's why they have it lined up like that with that character.
Yep,
because Eugene is supposed to become that character, essentially. I thought that was interesting that the switch flips for him and he goes and does that. I don't know. I've never been to prison. I don't even really know anybody who's spent any time in prison. But every movie I've ever seen about prison, everything ever, right? You know the classic. You
go up and you punch the biggest guy in the face.
Yeah, you either become someone's bitch or you punch the guy in the face. That's what you do. And it's like I think he's looking around that room a little bit and he's like,
I can't punch anybody in the face here.
He's kind of like, I think he's a little bit like, I'm already Negan's bitch, but in this world of people on the floor with the point system, I have to punch everyone in the face by showing them I can take. I can be the guy in charge. Right. Otherwise, no one's going to believe in him. No one's going to be scared of him. No one's going to respect that he is number 16. Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And
because it is kind of prison. I mean, that's sort of what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's effectively inmates running the asylum.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's up the pecking order to the biggest dog.
Yeah. So. Absolutely.
And even their point system and everything.
Yeah. So I mean, really, those were the only 2 stories we got in this episode. That's like the whole entire thing. We didn't get any Rick,
which is fine.
Yeah, I was so entertained by what was going on at the Savior's camp. It made me feel a little bit concerned that I've lost faith somewhat in Rick's camp. I felt almost like I wasn't on board as much with that group as I thought I was because of how much I enjoyed being away from them.
It's nice seeing a new setup.
You are Negan.
Yeah. I mean, Negan didn't do... Well, actually, he did kill someone in this episode. I was going to say he didn't do anything that horrible, but he definitely murdered someone.
Yeah.
Burned them alive.
Someone wrote in the chat, they were like, we know doctors aren't easy to come by, but to fire one...
Yeah, right.
That's amazing.
Fire one, yeah.
That is a great pun.
Right?
Thank you. I hate puns, but I love that.
The one thing we didn't talk about was Eugene's ability to actually deliver on his parlor trick science experiment.
Those are YouTube DIY videos.
Really?
Yes. So they're like that whole foam spouting in the air. That was a trend on YouTube 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like he was able to do basic DIY science as opposed to legitimate science.
And inflate some surgical gloves with what would he say?
He created his own helium. That was pretty cool.
It was hydrogen.
He used hydrogen to make helium.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
And then touched them with fire and they popped.
Yeah, it makes it pop. Yeah.
And they exploded.
Yeah, it was literally there are channels all about this on YouTube. So before the fall, he must have been a fan of stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you would imagine Eugene was the guy that sat at his computer endlessly. So the question becomes then, Eugene can do those parlor tricks and he can those small things. But the question is, what does he actually know how to do? He made a bullet. He made a functional bullet. That's a pretty real deal. It's
he
a lot
said
more
he
than
could make bombs. They had that conversation, which I thought was interesting.
Right, but he made a bomb that wasn't actually a bomb. He made a bomb that was foam shooting in the air.
Right, but if he had other chemicals and other whatever, he has the mental capacity to do it.
He needs the anarchist cookbook essentially.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And then so he does that stuff, and the girls act really impressed by what he's doing.
But it was interesting that she was impressed because the first thing he says is like, oh yeah, I was a part of the Human Genome Project and blah blah blah, and then she wants to engage him in the conversation on it, and he then shuts it down. I was actually a little surprised that she accepted the shutdown.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of said something.
Yeah.
They were like, is he really insulting us right now?
Right. But then, it's like, okay, well, I can make a bomb, and then he does something that's not a bomb. I don't know.
What I wondered was this. Okay, so she asked the question about the Human Genome Project, and he kind of shuts her down, right?
Yeah.
And so the first question I have is lot of people have read about like cloning a sheep and like stem cell research for medicine. Like a lot of people have read in an article, whatever, a little bit about this stuff.
Yeah.
So
an article.
yeah, and I think a lot of people would have her response, which is like, oh, you're a scientist who worked at a high level in that field. I've read some articles that sound really interesting. I would love to talk to you about that. I believe that. I don't think she needs to be somebody that knows very much scientifically to have that conversation. And I could also see her getting shut down in the same way. What I'm wondering is when he did his parlor tricks, and the one wife runs over and jumps on him, which is the wife, the redhead.
Frankie or Tanya, I don't remember which one was which.
I think
Frankie
Frankie's
was
the redhead.
Okay, yeah.
So Frankie runs over and she's hugging him and she's so excited.
Yep.
Do you think she was just conning him? Like she didn't actually care or think it was cool, really? She just was trying to get his trust so that he would make her the pills? That's what I think. I think they were like, those are weak bombs. But
I could see it either way, to be honest.
She was very excited about it. For her to hug him and everything, I was a little over the top.
I mean, she was doing like the flirty thing with like, would you like the massage? While her hand is on his leg and stuff like that.
She was the flirty girl in the high school movie who's trying to get the nerd to do her homework. Like that was what was going on. And I felt like... Yeah, I think she was faking it. I think she was faking it because their tone changed pretty drastically when he was like, "I'm too smart. You respect my intelligence. I'm not making these pills to kill Negan."
Yeah.
The one unhappy wife, Amber, we had seen her before.
Yeah.
She was unhappy. Do you think that's going to come back again? Her whole issue that she's having, because she was, or was that her drinking and everything? Was that just for the whole like pill con?
No, I think that's probably how she is because she had the issue before. She's the one whose husband died.
And Sherry was the one who was protecting her in the harem room or whatever.
Dwight killed her husband, right?
Yeah.
He's the guy out on the road.
I'm just curious if that's going to come back again, because she seems to be sort of like a, not rogue, but, she's a trouble wife, like she's going to cause issues.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's hard. That's really hard to say because Negan's he's so particular in the way that he runs things where he's like, you don't have to be here if you don't want to be here. So you wonder what happens if one of the wives is like, I do want to be here, but she's like just constant drama and trouble. Can he effectively divorce her?
I mean, she may just off herself, to be totally honest. Like,
yeah.
Because she's like, I don't even want to see this stupid trick. She's like, I'm just going to go get blackout drunk every night.
Yeah. Yeah, fair. All right, I suggest we get into predictions.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV predictions.
So a couple things. One, we did see some scenes from next week's episode, and it looks to be back with Rick and Michonne.
Yep.
And some Rosita.
Rosita stuff.
Yeah. So, did it look exciting to you guys? Were you excited about next week?
I know you're asking that because you didn't think it was exciting, right?
It's not that I don't find it exciting. It's just like it just looked like a little bit more like meandering. Like, we'll just burn another episode till we get to this big finale. And now I'm thinking, by the way, what you had said before, that you thought the Negan War storyline was probably going to be mostly resolved this season, it's definitely not going to happen.
Now they're drawing it out too long right now. It's going to be the first major shot happens at the end of this season, and it's at least the first half of next season.
I agree completely. Yeah. I think it's pretty all of next season, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the problem that I personally am having right now is the Rick and Michonne relationship. I don't feel it.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that. I don't feel like there's actual chemistry between the two of them. Not the characters, but on screen, the actors. I don't feel that chemistry. And I think the biggest problem I had with it is it was one of those relationships that all of a sudden it was just handed to us with no anticipation.
Yeah.
And I've never bought it. So an episode that probably 50 to 60% is going to revolve around that isn't super exciting to me. That said, if it's a good episode that the relationship is the secondary story of it, then it could be very good. I've never cared about Rick Schoen as a relationship. So.
Which is weird too because...
And I'm sorry, internet.
Yeah. Well, this is a weird thing because you and I have talked before about... we generally stay away from comic book spoilers until the very, very end of the episode, but we have made reference a bunch of times that in the comic books, this is a relationship shift. That they shifted one character. The character of Andrea, who died in the show a long time ago, was a totally different character. Carol, Michonne, and Andrea essentially form two characters in the comic book. So... in the comic book, when the same thing happens, it's not Michonne, it's Andrea at that point. it still kind of comes out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
It's the same thing. It pretty much comes, because the thing that happens last season in the TV show where Jessie and her son get eaten alive and Rick's like having a moment, that's directly from the book.
Yep.
And what happens, it's the same thing. It's directly following it.
Yep.
It's right in the aftermath is when it happens.
And I agreed. In the comics, I also don't love that Andrea and Rick relationship either.
But that one appeals to me more. For some reason, that one, like, it resonated. I'm not really sure why. Something about Michonne's character in the comic really worked. Anyway, we won't give too much away about that, because there's more that's going to happen, sort of. But
I mean, I agree. For next week, I'm not as excited for Rick and Michonne. I mean, it's just not a relationship, like you said. It's not something that we were rooting for a long time, you know, so it wasn't, like, satisfying when we got it. But I am exciting to see, because it seemed like they were setting up the plan now, you know?
Yeah,
they're
right.
starting to, like, enact everything and make this elaborate sort of plan, which is what I was hoping for.
I do like that it's going to have a great set piece. Like, having a lot of stuff happening around this fair setup and stuff like that. Like, it's going to be a great episode for... visual moments. Like there's going to be the fight up the Ferris wheel.
Yeah,
and stuff
totally.
like that. Like I think that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, honestly, and I think, you know, we've said this before, the show's not really that much about fighting walkers anymore, but you can still get in those situations.
Every now and then you like to see it.
Yeah, and you can get in those situations where there's enough of them around and not enough of you that it looked like there was a car being covered in them in the preview for next week.
Yeah, and they smashed out the windshield on it and stuff. And there's gonna be some classic Walking Dead people versus zombie to deal with.
I agree. So as far as specific predictions go, I'm going to say a couple things. One, we do get Sherry again. Sherry's going to come back. They'll reconcile their differences, and then she'll die in front of Dwight. That's I think, how that goes.
Yeah.
That would be what my gut tells me there. And I would say, secondly, I think that Eugene's going to get really comfortable. He's going to be given an opportunity to show his loyalty to Rick and the Alexandrians in a kind of precarious position where he has to, like, make himself a little uncomfortable to do it, and he's not going to do it. I think he's going to side with Negan in that first moment. And I think there will be, later on, he'll come back. Later on, I think he will come back to the Alexandrians, but it's going to be in a moment where he, like, has to do something really uncomfortable, like shoot someone in the back or something like that.
I don't think they're going to make him kill somebody, but there is going to be some sort of moment where it's kind of a prove your loyalty kind of thing. Like, if you want to leave right now, you can go back kind of thing. Like, and he decides to stay in the inner circle. And it's going to look like he's doing it for selfish reasons. But again, the whole theory and what the chat was saying, I completely agree with. He's playing the long game on this one.
Yeah.
So I think that he's doing it because as much as he isn't a real doctor and isn't this PhD and everything like that, he is a smart person.
Yeah.
And for somebody who wanted so much to be a hero last year, he wants to be a hero in the biggest way.
Yeah. Last prediction on Eugene. The poison pills are going to be relevant. He's going to use them. It's going to be that's going to be like his moment. Not necessarily the one we're talking about, but he's going to kill someone in that compound who gets in his way with those pills.
Interesting.
Or he's sent to take it back to Alexandria and does something, you know, to his own family. I see something happening with him going back to, or maybe being sent back to Alexandria, and something happening with him and Rosita. And that's where I see maybe like the end of Rosita or the end of Eugene or something like that happening. That's what I'm leading up to.
And you think he's a sociopath.
Yeah. That pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the predictions for this week. Anything else from you guys?
No, you hit most of what I was going to say too. I think next week is going to be very action heavy, moment based, and I think that's going to be great. I'm not going to see it for like over a week because I'm not going to be here for 2 weeks, but I think that's going to be good. But yeah, I think this longer story, we're going to get the first real shot of the revolution against Negan in the season finale.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Guys, if you want to share your thoughts, tweet at us, what have you, you can find me at Ben Bateman Media. Susannah, where can the folks find you?
You can find me at Susannah_Kim.
Yep. We're going to go to comic spoilers before we get the outro music, I think, though.
Oh, do you want to do any? I didn't think there was really any major ones to talk about. I mean, yeah, so guys, if you we'll just do a quick couple minutes on this. Yep. If you don't want to know anything related to the comic book that we haven't talked about before, then turn it off now. Get away from it. Turn your phone off. Unplug your iPhone.
Spoiler alert!
What have you. This is your last warning. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the start of Dwight siding against Negan.
Yes.
Because he was sent out there to kill her, which is why he lied to say that he was, or was successful in doing so.
Yeah.
And this is going to help lead to Dwight eventually leaving the compound and going to Rick to really kickstart the plan.
Yeah, I agree with that, because that's a plot in the comic book, is that Dwight ends up switching sides. Totally agree on that one. I guess the only other stuff from this episode that really jumped out at me that was comic book related was what we did talk about, which is that Michonne and Ezekiel are supposed to have that relationship in the comic book. That is not going to happen because she's with Rick, she's Andrea.
Yep.
I wonder how hard they're going to push the Carol Ezekiel thing, because of the war is going to start relatively soon.
Yep.
And that's important in the comic book, that they're both fighting in the war, and that's like what kind of brings them together in a lot of ways. And I just don't know that they're going to do that.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get into that relationship anywhere near as much.
But Ezekiel's sort of like humanity and part of his relationship to the Alexandrians, his willingness to fight, comes from that relationship. And so without it, I sort of wonder, like, will we buy his commitment? You know, what's going to be the thing?
I think the Richard piece is going to be bigger, as well as the surrogate son.
Yeah.
Because the surrogate son, I could be wrong, but I don't remember him existing in the comics.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a big piece of it. But no, I think this whole... It's interesting that differing from the comics is they have brought Eugene over to this side.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess that doesn't happen in the comic.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why it's great to see them taking a different approach to it, rather than just hitting those same beats that we got in the comic too.
No, I swear it happens in the comic.
Really?
They find him in the compound. He's working in that compound that he and Abraham find off site. It's not in Alexandria. It's nearby.
Right.
And he finds it with Abraham, and it's when Abraham takes the arrow through the eye. When he dies,
I forgot about that.
I think they find Eugene working on the bullets, and I think Negan takes him. I don't exactly remember how it happens, but
he doesn't move up to the inner circle.
No,
in the same way.
that's a different plot point. Yeah, I think he's just a prisoner.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much that. So, guys, thanks for watching. If you want to follow along, you can find John Carle at
The John Carle and Whiskey and Waffles on YouTube,
and you guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media on Twitter and Instagram. We'll see you same time, same place next week. Bye, guys.
Well, not me.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.